But first, let me set the table and start with this exclusive information that we've obtained regarding our interview with government UFO whistleblower David Grusch. Now, the interview sparked international attention, right? His claims that the United States government has secretly been in possession of alien spacecraft and that they've had bodies for decades and that they've even killed people to protect that secret. Now, as I've told you all along, I don't care if that's what it's about or not. I want to know what they know, or I want them to explain why they can't. All we know is that the accusations from Grusch were profound enough that Congress invited him to be the key witness at an historic UFO hearing. There, he repeated many of his claims from the interview, but said he personally faced retaliation. Listen.
Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Yeah, I have to be careful what I say. It was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
Now, some saw that as Grusch being dramatic. Well, now it seems that Grusch is saying the government leaked his personal medical information to smear him, discredit his claims that he made against them. Joining us now is the man who interviewed him for that NewsNation special, Ross Coulthart. It's good to have you, Ross. Thank you for doing this.
Good to be here, Chris.
So, Ross, tell us, what is the nature of the information that has come out, and why do we believe that it had to come from someone in government?
Okay, so earlier today, David Grusch received an approach from a news magazine, an online news magazine called The Intercept. They're doing their jobs, that's fine. They've been fed information. The problem is the information that they've been fed is information that David had already privately disclosed to us and actually volunteered in his interview with me. It was a section of the interview that didn't go to air. But basically, he discussed with us when I asked him whether there was any dirt that anybody could drag out to try to discredit him. He barely thought this was worth mentioning, but he acknowledged that he'd suffered from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, when he returned from Afghanistan. David served his country honourably and with distinction. He's a decorated officer. And unfortunately, when he came back from Afghanistan, like a lot of men in your country and in mine, he struggled with the demons of what he'd seen in combat. And at one time, he wouldn't mind me telling you this, he was suicidal. And his lovely wife was so concerned about him that at one stage she did call the police because there were guns in the house. And she wanted to make sure he was protected. And in the end, David was taken to a local hospital, given the treatment that he needed. And indeed, this is the most important thing, Chris, the intelligence community and the Defence Department clearly accepted that there was no issue because he was allowed to keep his security clearance and he continued to serve his country honourably. Now, there was in the documents that were prepared at the time, there was a thing called a temporary detention order, which transferred him to a medical psychiatric unit, an inpatient program, where he got the treatment that he needed. And this is a document that would be, if the media had done the right thing, it would be in his police department file, in the county sheriff's office. But Dave has checked today because he assumed that the journalist had done his homework and just asked the local sheriff for the files. The sheriff has confirmed it did not come from him. The only other place that had this information is the intelligence community. Dave's personal files inside the intelligence community, where quite properly, when anybody is security assessed, things like this have to be looked at. And somebody
so that's the
inside the intelligence community leaked it.
That's the crumb trail. The Intercept is an interesting outlet for them to go to after all their protection of Snowden. It's interesting that they would want to have anything to do with anything seen as negative. Now, I have two problems with this story. One is that if you're trying to fight transparency by smearing the guy who lit the fire for it, one, it's too late because the horse is out of the barn and we want to know no matter what happens to Grusch, with all due respect. But the second one is that somebody thought that playing with his mental health would be a way to discredit him, which is playing into one of the ugliest stigmas in our society. Now, just, people are going to trust you, Ross. You've acquitted yourself brilliantly in this entire situation. But just in case you're saying, oh, yeah, they're just covering for Grusch, listen to him in his own words from the interview. Here it is.
I served in Afghanistan, and I had a friend that committed suicide after I got back, and I dealt with that for a couple years, and I'm proud as a veteran who did not become a statistic, totally took care of that issue in my life, and it doesn't affect me anymore.
So you suffered PTSD?
I am, yes, I did.
Did that affect your explanation of what's happening today? Is it possible that you're deluding yourself?
No, absolutely not. I'm very proud to admit that was an issue in my life, and I encourage veterans watching here to get help so they're not a statistic, like a good friend of mine.
So I've got to be blunt about this. Yeah. You're not making this up. This is not a lie.
No, absolutely not.
It's great that you asked him about it. So what is your take on what's happening here?
Well, it's funny. The parallels here, Chris, are amazing. It's 52 years since Daniel Ellsberg, the last great whistleblower on the Defense Department, was literally, his psychiatrist's office was burgled in, I think, 1971. In an effort to try and discredit him. And medical records of Daniel Ellsberg were procured by the Nixon administration and used to try and denigrate him. It blew up in the intelligence community's face at the time. And frankly, I think there should be an inquiry into the circumstances of how sensitive records pertaining to a decorated combat veteran's file found their way to a journalist, not through the proper channels. This could have been requested under FOI, as is normal, but the county sheriff has confirmed that did not happen. And this is a man who suffered, literally had a phone call with one of his best friends, a guy serving in special operations. That best friend finished the phone call, and then apparently he shot himself very soon after. And that's a terrible trauma. I've suffered the loss of friends myself like that. It's a horrible thing to happen. And for anyone to seek to use the suffering of veterans, people who are dealing with PTSD, is utterly reprehensible. It's contemptible, and it should be exposed. There should be an investigation into how a sensitive file like this was so obviously leaked within the intelligence community to try and discredit a good human being.
PTS is a very common, misunderstood, underdiagnosed, and often shame-inducing, wrongly, syndrome. Most of the clinical community now, in fact, has dropped the D because they don't believe it is a disorder. One, that word is somewhat of a pejorative, but that also it requires different categorization within their own their own processing of what kind of malady it is. We just put up the stat that 1 in 5 veterans suffer from this, but it's all over society. And what they've done now by doing this is made Grusch even more credible. Because 1, he had talked about this on his own, so there's no gotcha. 2, he is expressing that he was able to muster the resolve to get treatment, and God bless his wife for helping him to do that. Getting the treatment that so many avoid because they're afraid of having the exact conversation that you had with him, and good on you for asking him the questions. And now we know that anything that they thought they had on him, he already admitted. He treated it in a way that a lot of people don't, right? Because they don't have the resolve or the resources, or they're worried about what people will think, and that the government knows he went through it and kept his classification status, his clearance. So they didn't have any questions about his acuity or his perception after this, and they knew about it. That leaves us with the main question. Did the Intercept guy give any clue as to who gave him the information?
None at all, sir. None at all. But we do know it didn't come from the only other possible source, which is the county sheriff. And can I emphasize, Chris, Dave actually wants me to emphasize that he holds the mental health struggles of US military and intelligence community personnel very close to his heart. And he believes it should be discussed. It shouldn't be stigmatized. And it's important we talk about this. There's an epidemic. I've lost very, very dear friends in the military in Australia who I met in Afghanistan, people who have suicided because they couldn't cope with what they had to deal with. It's absolutely outrageous that somebody would think that they can use this for an attempt to try and discredit a good human being. And the other thing, too, that needs to be emphasized is the Inspector General of the intelligence community has already found that Mr. Grusch is a victim of reprisals and harassment. There's already been a warning to the intelligence community that they must behave themselves and not continue harassing and taking reprisals against Mr. Grusch and other whistleblowers. And what utter contempt are they showing for the rule of law that they are flagrantly ignoring that edict from the Inspector General? This is a really grave issue of a complete flouting of the obligations of the intelligence community to heed the laws set down by Congress.
Hey, look, if anybody had any question as to whether or not there was hype around this idea that the government was fighting transparency, after all of your reporting and what Grusch had put out there and what came out at the hearing about them not wanting to show up themselves and keeping other people quiet, now you know. If it wasn't a FOIA request, the sheriff has no reason to lie about having released it because it would be a legitimate documents request. You don't give away private medical information, but that wouldn't be what this is if it was a transfer form based on an incident report. So that could have been asked for. Then it had to come from someone else who had it. It would have to be his doctor or someone in a filing office or someone in a government agency. So the question is, who can get answers? We can ask the questions, and I'm going to take leave of you and thank you very much again, Ross. Please send our best to Mr. Grusch. Appreciate his candor, not just about the transparency, but about these issues of mental health that affect so many people. And good for him for using this opportunity to do the opposite of whatever the motive was of the person who leaked it. And we're going to go right to a member of Congress right after the break and see what they're going to do about it. Thank you very much. Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.